Good afternoon, and today we have a pleasure to interview really hot shot. This is Dr. Marie-Pierre Saint-Onge. She is my friend and neighbor, uh, and I learned what she wrote the book Eat Better, Sleep Better, The Secret of the Food, what promote the good sleep. So good afternoon, doctor.
Hello, Maria. How are you?
And thank you very much to our audience. If you have trouble sleeping or sleep next to the snoring partner, nutrition is such an important part of your health. So this program is going to be for you. And if you're a medical professional who just like us, trying to find all the missing puzzles of the modern epidemic of bad sleep and sleep apnea, this program is going to be for you, because with that changing the most intimate routine we call our food, our nutrition, you can change a lot of things in your healthy set. And now I want to talk a little bit about my guest. uh, we actually, it's interesting how we met through our kids, because my son Benjamin and doctor's kids were in the same class. And I learned about doctor from the science fair, where her kids present a beautiful poster about sleep. And and then the parents of other classmates recommend me that if we're both doing sleep and both in the same class, we have to connect. And we met right before COVID, but I kind of was not able to imagine how lucky I am, who I have right in my town. So doctor complete her all degrees in nutrition, human nutrition, and she worked in Columbia University, and she studied intersection between nutrition and sleep. And she has, she was editor in a lot of magazines, and she produced a lot of articles, scientific and for lay people. So she has so many research in this area, so like true expert on a program. And finally, I open up our town magazine, and I see her picture and this book in a magazine a month ago. I said, that's it. That's meant to be. I have to bring you to the program and share your knowledge with my audience, how we can eat better and sleep better. Uh, so my first question to you, if you can share with us what inspired you to put all your knowledge in a book for us.
Right. Well, so one is that we do a lot of research and we put out a lot of scientific publications that really only reach medical doctors or research scientists and people who are in very specific fields, but not necessarily the general public. And the outcome of the research that we do is meant to improve the lives of the general public. And if we just only publish in scientific journals, we're not really reaching the people that we really want to, or we only reach a certain percentage of the population. So I was really trying to bring this knowledge forward for the general public through information based on the scientific portion of the book. But then what do we do with this information? We could tell people, it's better to eat more fiber, it's better to eat less saturated fat. But then where do you get fiber? And how do you avoid saturated fat? And what foods have more zinc and magnesium or tryptophan? What is that? So, and I don't think it's enough to then say, well, you can get magnesium and potassium from bananas and more fiber from whole grain barley and steel cut oats, for example, because then the next question is, but I don't really use barley. How do I cook with barley? What do I make with that? And so providing the recipes then provides some of the tools for people to be able to implement all of these recommendations in their daily lives.
This is amazing. But a lot of, like you mentioned some elements, but I think the most difficult thing, and I always bring that analogy to my patients, to fill the suitcase without breaking the zipper. So you have to offer something what can be easy enough to become a routine.
Right.
And I love the fact what your book contained 75 recipes. And, we're going to put the information about the book underneath the interview. And now it's 40% off on Amazon. It's really, time, it's a great book. It's really needed. But tell me, how did you choose what ingredient to include, what beneficial for sleep?
Mhm.
I know you mentioned the ingredients, but I want you to talk a little bit about the mechanism, what these specific ingredients, how they make sleep better.
Mhm. Yeah, so a specific process, right? So we talk and we explain in the book the role of melatonin, what role that plays in the body, how it helps with regulating our rhythms and improves one's ability to stay asleep overnight. And that hormone is produced from a specific amino acid called tryptophan that we get from protein-rich foods. So we were starting off from foods that contain tryptophan. What are those sources? So we have a whole list. Actually, we have tables in the book too that explain like what foods to look for that have higher tryptophan levels. But not only was it important to have tryptophan, but it's important to eat it with whole grains, slowly digestible carbohydrates to improve its absorption in the body. So then in bringing in, slowly digestible carbohydrates, so those are your whole grains and vegetables, leafy greens. And then the way the body makes melatonin from tryptophan requires other nutrients. And I mentioned zinc, magnesium, there's B vitamins that are involved in that process. So what are the rich sources of those nutrients? And then I provided a list of nutrients and the foods that are good sources of these nutrients to my co-author, Kat. And Kat then developed these delicious recipes that I then evaluated for their nutritive value to make sure that they had a healthful profile, also being heart healthy, because I'm very involved with the American Heart Association and reduction of cardiovascular disease risk.
Of course, that's such a direct correlation. But I want to ask you that question about how you talk a lot about not to use sugar.
Mm-hmm.
How exactly, what role sugar play? Because sometimes me, for example, we're not gonna go, I'm not that sane who I can be okay through the day, but towards the evening I don't have that enough energy to get to bed, so
Mm-hmm.
I need to eat. And sometimes I have a craving for sweet food.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, what's the mechanism how really sugar destroy the sleep?
Yeah. So what we found in our research is that when you have more sugar or more refined carbohydrates, like the white breads, white pasta type foods, white rice, it tends to make your sleep more disrupted at night. So it makes you go from deeper sleep to lighter stage of sleep. So that's what we call arousals. So you're not necessarily waking up, but you're not staying in deeper stage of sleep as long as you should. And that's what we're calling arousals that happen more repeatedly when you have more of the sugar, refined carbohydrates. And in some other studies, we found also that people who have more refined carbohydrates and sugar in their diet have a higher risk of insomnia.
But give me practical advice. If I have a craving for sweet, and I have a lot of patients, like it's so interesting because I observe my patients on a screen or in the real life, and I ask them about habits, and I even had it today. And I see the patient, and she's struggling with losing weight, and I ask her what is she eating, and she eats totally healthy. And I'm thinking, maybe a little bit like me, she has a craving for sweet towards the night. So, and I want to, without making her feel guilty, give her good recommendations if you have a craving for sweet like me.
Yeah.
What do you do? So what what should I do if I have that craving?
Yeah, so sometimes reaching for a piece of fruit, that's also sweet, but also comes with fiber and is more hydrating or watery, could be helpful, lower in calories. Or, yogurt with a little bit of granola in the evening might be okay, smaller portions, but then also asking yourself if you've had enough earlier in the day to eat. Sometimes, we tend to be good, right? And be more restrictive in our intake. We be good in quotations because, if you're trying to limit your energy intake, that might be detrimental to you later in the day where, you've been too strict on yourself early on and then the cravings come later at night. So having, more calories earlier on could be useful for curbing those cravings later in the day.
But you're talking about fruits. What examples of fruit can you make? What people can prepare? Because I said to my patients, everything is good, like in planning. You have to plan. You know yourself.
Yeah.
So what to prepare in case you cannot take it no more?
Right. So banana is great, right? A piece of fruit, a banana is easy. You just peel it and go. You want to add it with a little bit of peanut butter, have some protein there. That's also good. Apple, oranges. And in the book, we have a lot of compotes. We have 3 different compotes. So a little bit of compote with some yogurt would be great. So something like that. The compotes, there's a tropical fruit compote that has kiwi and pineapple. You can make a batch, freeze it, and then, freeze it in smaller portions to take out when it's time.
No, that's great. Like that's what, I usually recommend to my patients if they have that craving, maybe to keep a little portable fridge next to the bed. Open up your eyes and here you have your compote or, jello or whatever, whatever you think is gonna make you feel satisfied.
Yeah. And we also have tips to convert the compotes into like a sherbet, frozen treat. So that could be something, to have at, in the evening if you're looking for something sweet that's healthy.
Because this, I'm talking about specific patient who I met today who said, I eat totally healthy, but I love ice cream. So maybe that idea of sorbet, which has a consistence of ice cream, but just contain totally different amount of sugar, can be really useful, and I always recommend your book to people who are struggling. So can you please tell me, if, we're all good when we meet the doctor and we're all ready to the change, but changes, have to come at home. So for someone who's struggling with sleep, but really find it really hard to do dietary changes, what first step would you recommend for somebody who to start improving their sleep through the food?
Yeah. So one thing we have in the book is a meal plan. So that helps take the guessing work out of it if you want to start off and try the meal plan for 4 weeks. And then maybe then that helps to propel this healthy cycle and you can continue on your own. We also provide different tables with foods to suggest to include in your diet. So if you're not ready for a full makeover with a meal plan, you can look at the different foods or ingredients that we recommend and then start making those types of substitutions in your own diet, maybe incorporating a recipe or two from the book and then slowly kind of going that way.
That's like, for example, I see pasta on a front page, but what type of pasta is that? It doesn't look like a regular pasta. What type of pasta is that?
That's a whole wheat spaghetti. Yeah.
Whole wheat spaghetti. Because I noticed there are a lot of different type of spaghetti. It can be rice spaghetti. It can be buckwheat spaghetti. For somebody who really loves spaghetti, like, I think the way food look make us crave the food. So we have to, without breaking the zipper.
We also have a chickpea pasta recipe in the
chickpea pasta.
Yeah.
Yes, excellent idea. And I see you use a lot of greens. So that's,
to me that was very important to incorporate a lot of vegetables in the dishes.
That's great. But everybody talk about that famous Mediterranean diet, which been around, I don't know, 3,000 years, 4,000 years, maybe 10,000 years. A lot of people, people live on Mediterranean
Yeah.
for a very long time. And why is it so important? What role it play for circadian rhythm? And what the long-term benefits of that specific diet? I'm not talking about American diet. I'm not talking about Ethiopian diet,
Mhm.
but specifically Mediterranean diet for sleep and overall health.
Yeah, so the Mediterranean diet is important because it's one of the few diets that's actually been evaluated in clinical trials with outcomes of cardiovascular disease and showing that if you improve your diet in a way that's more closely aligned with the traditional Mediterranean diet, you reduce your risk of heart disease. So that was very, very important. The study I'm referring to is called PREDIMED. It was conducted in Spain. So we've also looked at these types of dietary patterns and how that's related to better sleep, and find that when you have a diet that's more closely in line with a Mediterranean diet pattern, you have a reduced risk of having short sleep, reduced risk of insomnia symptoms, and better overall sleep quality.
But what are main principles of Mediterranean diets for our
Yeah.
listeners who are not familiar with that?
The Mediterranean diet is rich in fruits and vegetables, whole grains. It includes smaller and fewer portions of meat. So having meats just a few times a week, meat and poultry a few times a week, with more preference towards fish as a source of protein, limiting sweets, and including nuts and seeds, and also olive oil. So that's kind of at the heart of the Mediterranean diet. The major components being fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, and olive oil.
Is it any specific nuts you would recommend?
Yeah, so we include a lot of walnuts and pistachios in our cooking because walnuts and pistachios have been shown to have melatonin, and also have some research showing improvements in sleep with walnut intakes, and the pistachios having a similar profile that would be conducive for better sleep.
But why you said it's very limited in meat? Because right now, half of my practice on that protein diet, and they eat meat, maybe 3 times a day. They working on the proteins. They want to develop the muscles.
Yeah, it seems to be one of those fads that's ongoing these days. But we don't need as much protein as we actually eat, so there's no recommendation from the health officials or health experts, nutrition experts, that anyone should be eating above and beyond what's already being consumed in America. Our diets are already very well in terms of the protein content.
And my last question to you, I know you heavily involved, like you really devoted to American Heart Association, and it's such a noble goal to reduce risk of, cardiovascular disease, because 70% of my practice have high blood pressure, atrial fibrillation. So it's very, very common, and it is a very young age as well. So what are famous 8 from American Heart Association?
Yes, so as a sleep scientist, we're really excited that the American Heart Association included in 2022 sleep duration as an 8th metric for health professionals to track when they're evaluating their patients' risk for heart disease. Before that, it was called Life's Simple 7. So it was, are we meeting goals for a healthy diet, for physical activity, for a healthy body weight, for cholesterol levels, glucose, blood pressure, and not smoking? Those were the 7 things to track. And then in 2022, sleep duration, which made it as an additional factor that was relevant for heart disease. So now we need to keep track of these 8 components for a healthy heart.
Thank you very much, Doctor. It was really, eye-opening, and I hope your book is going to become like a table book for every family, because I think in my mind, what I see, what's going on in the United States, and actually in Europe as well, what changing the whole concept of nutrition is really important for our humanity to survive. Maybe in some countries, not in every country, but in a lot of developed countries.
Well, thank you so much.
And I think what you do really, it's affect every single area of life. So I hope, with that discount on Amazon, people will change towards Mediterranean diet and, towards healthy eating habits.
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you.
Thank you. So we're looking forward for more discoveries. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Absolutely.